And so when it came to my attention that Davante Adams has been spilling his guts here recently, he's been yapping all over Sin City, my eyebrows were raised a little bit. And he's talked about a gaggle of issues, but his comments on Aaron Rodgers, those popped up on my radar. And I said, wait a minute. Let me take a closer look. So I pulled out the microscope and I took a closer look. Now I don't know if you saw these or not. So there's a lot of things that have been said, but the one that caught out to me, the one that caught my attention, Davante Adams explaining that Aaron Rodgers has the quote Michael Jordan effect on his teammates. That's called the money quote, and he said that like Jordan, Rodgers makes other players better simply by being present. He said, in fact, just to prove that I am not making this up, we actually have it. This is from a podcast, a recent podcast, the interview. And here is Davante Adams going on a rant, but listen to the key part here. He talks about the Michael Jordan effect. Listen.
You said, I'm going from one Hall of Famer to another. But what was that experience like being with somebody as talented, obviously a future first ballot Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers?
It was amazing, man. I mean, I don't discount anything, that Aaron was able to do for me because he's the best quarterback, in my opinion, to play this game. What he did for me was not just about the type of balls or whatever that he threw, great back shoulder, whatever. He had the Michael Jordan effect. He gonna make you play better. He gonna bring out your best just by being on the field. It's like he was a great leader, but it was more so just about, you would always notice in OTAs, like, every now and then a guy that's in his, 15th year at that point or whatever, they get days off in OTAs, so it'd be times where he wasn't practicing, and you would just notice people start to, not fall off, not practicing hard, but it wasn't the same as when Aaron is out there.
All right, so there's a lot there. Let's get to it. So the question here, is Davante Adams' comparison, you just heard it, is his comparison of Aaron Rodgers and Michael Jordan, the Jordan effect, in bounds or out of bounds? So I have out of bounds. I've got Shaggy Dog, Shrapnel, and Fine Pottery. And we're going to put all of these things into a pot, and we're going to make a stew, is what we're going to do. So, Davante Adams, now, you heard the audio, and there's more of it than that, but he gave his former quarterback a nice bubble bath and a shoulder massage. Kill him with kindness, right? So you start the bath there, light the candles. Now, regardless, it's not the Jordan effect. I don't think that's the proper terminology. I know what he's trying to get at, but I don't buy it. The analogy doesn't hold water as far as I'm concerned. I'll tell you why. I file this one in what I call the Shaggy Dog story category. Adams implying that players, when Rodgers was not around, were not putting the same focus. They were not present in the moment when Rodgers was not actually practicing. Now, my theory is that's always the case. When you take the star out, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or anyone else, it's not just because of Aaron Rodgers per se. The starter versus the backup. You think in Buffalo, when the Bills are practicing and Case Keenum is throwing the ball around, that the team is locked in like when Josh Allen is, or Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes when he's out and Chad Henne is under center? Of course not. Of course not. Now, if you want to say the Jordan effect, what the Jordan effect means to me is that in big games, everyone else steps up around you, that you can pass to Paxson and he'll knock down a shot, or Craig Hodges or some other secondary player. I look at the Packers, and that has been the opposite. They have gone the other direction of the Jordan effect in the postseason. It's not like guys rise up when Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback in the NFC playoffs. Playoffs? No. You think those guys rose up for Rodgers at Lambeau against the 49ers in the playoffs this past postseason? I'm shaking my head no. All right, now, part B of this. Is there a hidden meaning to the Davante Adams rant? So being Sherlock Holmes, I am nodding my head yes on that one. And while Davante Adams was attempting to play footsie with Rodgers, you got to dig a little deeper here, below the surface. Because the way that was interpreted, there was some shrapnel that was flying around. All right, let me explain. So Aaron Rodgers has often been guilty in recent years of truancy from OTAs. He believes that it is below him. It is unnecessary for a player of his stature, and he'd rather have ayahuasca out in the woods somewhere than go to OTAs. He doesn't value that practice time. So Adams is saying how important it is when Rodgers is there, but Rodgers, last couple of years, hadn't been there. So his actions say otherwise, Rodgers. It's also a backhanded shot at Matt LaFleur, the coach in Wisconsin, because I believe it's the coach's job to make sure your team's engaged and not let practice get sluggish and disheveled and all that. And so the implication being that when Rodgers was not practicing, that the team was out of sorts. Some of the guys were just kind of going through the motions. They were not as locked in mentally as they would have been if Rodgers had been out there under center. All right, now the last word here. So how much pressure, let's turn the tables here. How much pressure is on Davante Adams now in Vegas? And so I thought about it. We talked a lot about the Raiders recently with the Tom Brady story, and the Raiders didn't really want Derek Carr. They wanted Tom Brady, and then John Gruden screwed that up at the end a couple of years ago. But from a production standpoint, Adams is expected to be a neutron bomb for the Raider offense. It's a high bar to clear. Now, my friends who bleed silver and black tell me that Davante Adams is the final jigsaw puzzle piece, that this completes them, that the puzzle on offense is now complete, that in Sin City, the Raiders are now high rollers. They're whales when it comes to putting up points on the scoreboard. That all they needed was this Davante Adams. And they sold the deed to the family farm to get Davante and to give him, they ended up giving him the riches of Solomon. For a wide receiver who gets targeted, 7, 8, 9 times a game at most? $140 million, $65 million guaranteed. Now, that is a lot of cheese. Lot of cheese. Now, even if it's only a 3-year deal, because there's an out after 3 years for $67 million. It's not my money, but we believe Adams will be productive, but I believe he will fall short of the inflated numbers in Green Bay. Davante, in order to meet up to expectations, he has to go 1,300-plus yards, 11-plus touchdowns, and has to average 12-plus yards per catch to meet the stats on the back of his football card or his Pro Football Reference page online. And so that's what he did with the cheese curds. And expectations are like fine pottery. Right? If you've ever played around with pottery, the harder you hold them, the expectation, the more likely they are to crack, like pottery. Right? And you could also interpret what Davante Adams had to say about Aaron Rodgers as a sign of, boy, I've downgraded at quarterback, which he has, going from Aaron Rodgers to Mr. Carr. And as far as the Jordan thing, again, not only do the Green Bay players not step up in key playoff games for Aaron Rodgers like the Bulls did for Michael Jordan, but you also have the fact that Davante Adams himself left Aaron Rodgers. He didn't want to play with Aaron Rodgers anymore. He left him to the side there to go to Vegas to play with Carr. And I don't remember, and maybe this happened, it was a long time ago in like the 90s, but did any player leave the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan, to play for like Hershey Hawkins? I don't recall that happening. But maybe it did. It was possible. I mean, I forgot it. It's a long time ago.